is calling you. The universe is calling me. It speaks both day and night. It's full of dark and light.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to SkyTour Radio. I'm here with Amanda and Daryl, and we have Tara down there. Hi, Tara.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing? How is it
Hi,
out in
great.
Arizona? How is it today in Arizona?
Beautiful sunny day, but it's cold. It's in the 70s and 60s.
Okay.
It's cold.
Did you hear that, guys? Did you hear that? Okay,
That's
Daryl?
what you get used to growing up, believe me.
7 degrees here. Going to be below zero tonight.
Oh, I don't know how you do it. Great respect for all of you.
She would become a terrasicle.
I would. I'm a desert dweller for sure.
Yeah. Well, Amanda's used to some cold.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. She's used to
January
cold.
in Canada, yep.
Oh,
Said.
Those words. Yes, exactly.
All
Those
of you
words just make
guys, you guys rock the ice, man.
Well, you know what? Speaking of ice, that's what tonight is about. In a little bit of time, we'll talk about that. In the interstellar medium, this is an astronomy show, as you all know, and we have been doing streams of the comet that has been passing by. It's actually heading toward the Earth, not on a collision course. Don't worry. I know, right? Not on a collision course, but it's heading our way, and it's going to be at closest approach in just a few days on the 1st and 2nd of February, which we'll be streaming, by the way, in SkyTour Livestream. And SkyTour Livestream, for those who may not recall, SkyTour Livestream is a stream to which this radio show is a companion, where we actually stream the universe live using our remote telescope system out in Arizona. We have a second one behind me. You can't see it. It's in the blue light back there. But it's there, and it's going to go into the new building we're building here in Connecticut. And then we have a third telescope that we're adding to the mix at some point. So that's what SkyTour Livestream is about. It's about bringing you the universe. Okay, and so if you subscribe to it, you can join our Patreon if you like. You can subscribe and just check it out on YouTube. Go to our, you can actually, in fact, go to our site, okay, which is the stream is listed below. It's skytourlive.org or skytourlive.com. And you'll get to see everything we do. You can go to the upper left, and you'll see SkyTour Livestream, and that'll take you to our live YouTube channel. And you go to the right, that's the Patreon, where you can join and support SkyTour Livestream. But either way, it's about bringing astronomy out of the deep universe and into your living rooms, and that's what we do. Tara has joined us on some. Daryl is with us all the time. Amanda started with us way in the very beginning. So they're all intimately familiar with SkyTour Livestream and what it offers. Tara's actually a mover and shaker in the SkyTour Livestream organization, and that's why she's shaking over there. And, but it's like, I know I make her nuts. I make her crazy. I've got to take it easy because I'm so excited about this. It's easy to make mistakes, right, when you're just starting out something like this. So that said, we want to bring you the universe. We want to bring you the stuff that you can't see. And that's what SkyTour Livestream is about, and it's also a stream where you can take control as well, because we have people that have joined us and decided that they want to become a patron, and they pay a monthly subscription. For that subscription, they get personal guided tours of the universe, and they can actually take those images and do what they want with them. But we provide them a high quality, highly processed, finished, high resolution image. So it's like having your own personal astronomer, in me, and the astronomer, Daryl, who is always with us. Okay.
Oh, stop.
Oh, what an amazing thing, though, to get an opportunity to hang out with you guys.
Well, yeah,
And
and I just think that it's pretty interesting though, because we end up seeing a lot of really cool things. And last night we saw the most amazing comet, and the comet that we saw, all right, well, was this one right here. Okay,
Ooh.
this is a photo taken with our SkyTour live stream system. This was not, I think this was the night before last. And we can tell because the tail is heading kind of to the right, and the tail was heading down and to the right when we looked at it yesterday. The tail changes orientation as it starts going around the sun. And what is that tail? Well, we'll get to that. But
The tail changes orientation over the course of the night also.
yeah, that's right. And
As the Earth rotates on its axis, the comet goes with it.
well, the comet's doing its own thing as it's orbiting the sun.
Yeah. Carry on.
Okay. So anyway, a comet is a very interesting beast. Okay, and one thing that's interesting about comets, it's kind of important to look at a comet in view here, and when we actually look at a big comet like this, one of the things that we notice is there's several parts of it, right? Now we see down there on the right side, this is a pretend comet. It's not a real comet.
Okay. For demonstration purposes.
Demonstration purposes only. That's right.
Yes.
You see a hydrogen envelope. Now, what's happening is the comet is made of materials that the sunlight, when it strikes it, is going to be dislodging. And it dislodges it by heating up the surface of the comet. And you'll find that gases inside the comet that are trapped in the icy particles will suddenly be freed. And they will cause sometimes these voids inside the comet to like suddenly have these jets that shoot out. And these jets of material are going to spew dust and the cometary soil, if you call it that, and ices out into space. And it's also going to ionize the molecules of material that are in the airborne, airborne, spaceborne area around the nucleus. This area right near the front of the nucleus is called the coma. You see that listed there. And it is kind of like a cloud of vapor, but it's the stuff that sublimated off of the comet and made its way into space around the comet. Now, there's no wind other than the solar wind. And the solar wind does something to a comet. It starts to push particles and gas back from the comet. And so when it pushes gas back, that gas is ionized. It's plasma. So it's just protons or electrons or both. And it's heading back behind the comet, but it's going exactly opposite the direction of the sun. All right. So when we see a cometary tail like that, it's called an ion tail, which we see right there in the lower left. This is ion tail. And it's literally following the path caused by the solar wind streaming onto the comet. All right. And then to the upper side, you see a dust tail. Now, in our image, we saw both of these things. All right. And if you notice the dust tail, it's going to be all the small particles of dust that were liberated by the melting and sublimation of these ices and by the gas jets that are suddenly sending material up around the comet. This plasma tail can be millions and millions of miles long, as can be the ion tail. But if we look back at our photo we took, all right, they're going to the right. You see the green core of the comet, which we'll discuss. And that tail going to the right is the ion tail, right? And below the cometary nucleus there, you see that yellowish haze with a very sharp line to the lower left. That's actually the dust tail of the comet. And you might say, wait a minute, that doesn't look like anything that we just saw when we looked at this picture here. All right, that dust tail should be streaming out behind it. Well, it actually is streaming out behind it, but the comet's coming toward us. So the tail is past the cometary nucleus, and we're looking at it spreading out behind the comet as it's approaching us. And you might say, well, wait a minute. So you're saying the sun looks like it's to the left in that image. Well, you got to keep in mind that ion tail, that thin tail streaming to the right, some of that tail is actually going into the page. All right. And so that's it's far in the distance at the end on the right side, but then much closer at the nucleus of the comet. And so when you account for all those 3D tricks that are played on your eyes, it all works out properly. And the dust tail behind the comet like that is basically following the rough orbit of the comet caused by the solar wind. And it's actually a really, really neat a neat thing. And Daryl, you've been with us for all the streams so far looking at the comet. You had some comments about the comet. There were people looking at the comet in other streams, but I think you felt that this one was actually a pretty good rendering of the comet that we created. Right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, okay. All right. Well, forget it. All right. Anyway.
Well, I an astronomy vendor online, very well-known source, and you got one of your telescopes from them. I shall not name them.
Mhm.
They were doing a live stream just after we ended a stream a couple of nights ago, and their comet images were not nearly as good as yours were.
Well, I think that we have the benefit of a tremendous sky over us. Let's be clear; it's just an amazing sight, true dark sky sight.
Yeah,
and
I mean, they were broadcasting from Tampa, Florida, and they were deep in the city's light dome, and all you could see was the nucleus of the comet.
yeah,
No tails at all.
yeah. Well, but still, what it goes to show you is that even in the city, you can see a comet. It may not be as dramatic, okay, that's for sure. But this comet isn't that dramatic in terms of what you can see with your eye, because you can only see it with binoculars, and then it's only going to be kind of a fuzzy spot. Now, it is getting closer to us, and its magnitude, its brightness, we'll get a little bit more, but that's going to change. It's going to rapidly change as it then heads away from us.
It's already being reported as visible to the naked eye from a very dark sky.
Yeah. So, but you can only see it with binoculars in general. And if you can see it with the naked eye, I'd be amazed. They might be able to see some of the dust tail, possibly, but I think mostly they're going to see the nucleus and the coma around the nucleus. But who knows? It depends. You're exactly right. It depends on the site and whether it's going to be dark enough.
Yeah. What you're seeing in that picture, when you see the the dust tail, evidently leading the comet, as you said, it's a point of view thing. That's called an anti-tail when the dust tail appears to go ahead of the comet or the gas tail. And that's just our perspective as we pass through the comet's orbital plane around the sun. That with the angle of the dangle, it looked like the tail was actually leading the comet. And
That's
it's
cool.
sort of fading night by night now. It was very distinctive a couple of nights ago.
Yeah, I mean, the anti-tail to the left, that is the dust tail of the comet in the seen in perspective from the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
But that ion tail, that's going to be interesting to watch that change its direction. And as you said, rightfully, right, the ion tail will change direction a little bit in the sky, and of course, the actual orientation in the telescope, it may change, of course. And you said as the Earth rotates, and that is true. The orientation will change, but in space, it's still going the same way. It's going to be moving slowly to keep pointing away from the sun as it goes.
Yes, yes.
But I think that was a good observation you made about it.
When Comet Hyakutake came through back in 1996, near its close passage to Earth, which Hyakutake also passed close to the pole star as ZTF here is going to, Hyakutake had a very distinct, sharp anti-tail. It looked like a spike sticking out ahead of the comet. Very sharp and pointy. It was really cool looking.
Yeah.
And we're seeing another example of an anti-tail now, but it's not as skinny as Hyakutake's was.
Yeah, and I guess every comet's different, So the question is, what are these comets made of? And one of the questions we got a lot yesterday was, why is the comet green? And that was a very, very good question, right? People, that's the first thing you'll notice. Why is it green?
And what a green, too. It's different.
It's just a stunning green, isn't it, Tara?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that green result in the coma is in the coma of the comet, or the comet of the coma, right? That's the result of the solar wind, the protons and electrons striking the ices and the compounds on the surface. But that's the result of the ionization of carbon atoms, carbon molecules, which are like CC. Carbon is C in the periodic table. So CC molecules. And when you ionize a carbon molecule, you'll get a green glow, right? And when you ionize cyanogen molecule, which is a carbon and a nitrogen molecule, you'll get a green glow. And we see both cyanogen, and if you're thinking cyanide, you're right, and carbon, they'll both get this green glow. Now, Daryl and I have talked about this in the past too, about Camille Flammarion, when Halley's Comet came around last time. He just postulated that, since there's cyanogen in the coma and possibly the tail of the comet, as the Earth goes through this, could it pose a danger to life on Earth? Because of course it's cyanide, and everyone knows cyanide is of course deadly to humans. And of course that started a firestorm. Next thing you know, there were people that had masks you had to wear so you could be safe from the comet pills to take to be safe from the cyanide, and of course they all lived, so clearly the pills worked.
That was two apparitions back, strictly speaking.
Yeah.
1910, not 1986.
Oh yeah, that's correct. In 1986, I think we knew enough, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, we didn't have any problems then.
You can never know enough.
And I mentioned that Arthur Conan Doyle, the guy who wrote Sherlock Holmes, he wrote a story about Earth passing through a comet's tail and evidently killing everybody on the planet. And then everybody woke up again the next day.
That is a funny story.
That was back about 1913, I think.
So just put him to sleep?
Yeah, pretty much.
I guess so. The comet had sleeping gas or something, right?
Right.
Yeah. So when you look then at a comet, we have these distinctive shapes in the comet. We have these distinctive elements, right? So we have the nucleus, we have the coma, we have the ion tail, we have the envelope of this irregular hydrogen cloud of all these elements that are dislodged from the surface. And you got to keep in mind, hydrogen is the most numerous element in the entire universe. It's the top dog. Next is helium, and then oddly enough, oxygen, and then number 4 is carbon. So it stands to reason that these billions of year-old interlopers, things that have lived out in the far reaches, which we'll talk about in our solar system, probably would have come from, or been composed of carbon and oxygen and hydrogen in general, because those are the most prevalent ones. But we also have to keep in mind that when they formed to begin with in our solar system, they formed as the result of many supernovae that occurred before. And there were all kinds of other elements that were forged in the hearts of stars that now became dust in our solar system. And when comets formed in the very beginning of our solar system, in the far reaches of our solar system as icy bodies, they embodied and had many of these elements bound into them. So we don't just see oxygen, we don't just see hydrogen, we don't just see, water, ice. We see many other things in a comet, all right? And this is a piece of interstellar dust right here. But
my gosh.
Take a look at all the many things you can have on it. You can have carbon dioxide ice, water ice, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, PAHs, carbon monoxide, okay? We can have ammonia, we can have methane, okay? Acids, we can have all these kinds of things on a comet, all right? And as well. And so, and again, the light striking them will cause different things to happen. So heating is going to drive off certain certain elements and compounds. So when a comet is heating or being heated by the sun, we're going to see a massive amount of materials in that coma. A comet spectrum is actually a very interesting looking thing. And when we get our SkyTour live stream 1 back up and running again, that telescope you can see right back there. There it is, right there. Yeah, we get that back in the new building that we're going to build out front here for the East Coast. We're putting a spectrometer on it, so we're actually going to be able to look at things like comets and figure out exactly what's in them. We'll be able to see that, right? So that's going to be kind of cool. And the spectrometer is sitting over on the shelf right behind me. I just can't wait to hook it up. When we look at the comets and how they're composed, we got to remember that there's so much in them because there was so much here when the solar system formed. And now when the solar system formed, where did comets form? And were they comets when they first formed? The answer is no. Comets become what we see in the sky because of solar heating. They don't start life and say, I'm a comet and I'm an asteroid. Comets are composed of more materials that contain ices, yes, but there are components of rock. When I showed you this interstellar dust piece, there is a silicate core here, right, in the middle, an interstellar dust grain. Well, if you multiply this up and magnify it, it's different for comets a little bit, but the same type of thing applies. There's other ices on the surface, and all these other things around this grain are all the different types of ices that are on a cometary system, and so forth. And so when we see this melting occur from solar impact of these protons and electrons, a solar wind, we're going to see this cloud of material. And it's a very elaborate cloud. And so that's the kind of thing that is really important. And those jets that I talked about, here's an example. Okay. That vertical line going off to the upper left, that's not a mistake on the photo. That's a jet of particles flying off this particular comet, which is from the Rosetta mission. This is Churyumov-Gerasimenko, right? Beautiful. And we actually landed a probe on that, not relatively successfully, but there was so little gravity. Cool. Yeah. And the Philae lander, it went down, and it was supposed to touch down softly and then fire these explosive bolts to latch it onto the comet. Well, it touched down softly, fired the explosive bolts, but for whatever reason, they didn't take, and all they acted like was a trampoline and bounced it back off the comet, which had such low gravity that I don't remember the exact number, but I think the probe went up a whole, like 15 kilometers over the comet, and then came back down, bounced again, another several kilometers, and bounced again, and finally lodged in a crevice. It took a few pictures, and then, of course, it was dead after that. So
it landed on its side, didn't it?
Mm.
Yeah, well, in the crevice, it got lodged sideways. Remember that? It was, and that was kind of disappointing. So I guess we're not really good at landing on comets yet. And part of the reason is because we didn't know what the surface was made of. We didn't know how hard the surface was. We didn't know if we could penetrate the surface. It turns out we could, but the latching mechanism just wasn't good enough or efficient enough to actually latch onto anything. So there's a few things we don't know.
Too
fancy, I think.
Yeah.
Could that thing have bounced off that comet? It looks so small. You said it bounced for like 15 kilometers. It seems like it could have fallen off the edge or something.
Well, that's the thing. The only gravity out there is the comet itself. So whichever way it bounces off, it's eventually going to find its way back to that very weak gravity that the comet has. And it was actually so weak that if you got a running jump and pushed off really hard, you might just be able to put yourself in orbit around the comet. Okay, because it wasn't that strong. It's very weak. Just the pressure of you walking on the comet would push you off the comet a fairly good distance because it has so little gravity.
Wow.
And that was Churyumov-Gerasimenko. Okay, so cool. Yeah. So that said, and you're blurry when you're there, by the way, just so you know. So I just make it clear.
I thought it was.
No, yeah, your glasses, Tara. It's your glasses. Yeah. So that's it. That's the thing that is of concern for us too is like, if a comet's heading for us, for instance, how do we blast it? How do we get rid of it? Well, we had a comet strike us, apparently, the Tunguska blast in the early 1900s. That was what looks to be a cometary impact. Now, the comets are made of ices, so they're not going to survive to the ground generally, but they do pack quite a punch. And when it strikes the upper atmosphere, it goes deeper into the atmosphere until it hits a wall. And that wall is this point where this maximum aerodynamic pressure that this object can handle is reached. And after that, it just goes boom. And when it blows up, it doesn't just gently fall apart because it's got a lot of energy of motion. And when it is made to suddenly slow down and stop, energy can't be created or destroyed. So it's actually converted into a different kind of energy, and that's thermal energy or heat. And so you will get a comet striking the atmosphere, penetrating to some depth, reaching the maximum pressure capability, and it boom, it will just blast apart. And that's what happened over Tunguska, which is often, I think, Siberia, is it? The Siberian region?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
This is also what they think happened, what some think happened to a place in Syria called Abu Huraira.
Yes.
This is back around the time of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, about maybe 12,000 years ago, that a comet impact hit over this village called Abu Huraira, and it vaporized the entire village and everybody and everything in it. Temperatures got to thousands of degrees, and just like snapping your fingers, everybody was gone, vaporized.
And didn't they find telltale glass
They did.
in the building structures?
They did. They found glass particles, spirals, whatever, all over the place in the area where everything vaporized.
Was it vitrified glass?
Well, there's a thing called tektites, which aren't really the same thing, but are similar. They're sort of like when meteorite impacts on Earth, the silicates turn to glass, and it rains back down on the planet. They look like peanuts, little black peanuts.
Yeah.
And I have several of them. But the same idea happened is that, the impact was so hot and so hard and fast that the comet went off like a big flashbulb up in the sky, and it just instantly vaporized everything and everybody. And silicates, I guess, dust on the surface or dust in the comet turned into glass. And they find the little glass particles all over the place around there.
Yeah, and it's probably the actual soil in the area. If you superheat silicon dioxide, which is sand, you can melt it together and form a glass. Interesting thing about your windows in your house, if they're actual glass windows, that's a strange form of matter. Yes, it's a solid. However, in the old days, windows over time the glass would sag in the window frame. Right? You're familiar with that?
Yep.
Right?
Yes, they're thicker on the bottom.
Yes. And that reason they did that is because the glass was a semi-liquid, even though it was a solid matter. And so, but if you melt sand, you'll get glass. Another example is something called a fulgurite. Are you familiar with a fulgurite? I think Daryl, you know what a fulgurite is. Amanda, do you know what a fulgurite is?
Sure.
Yeah, I think Amanda.
I do not.
Okay.
Fulgurite. I would think like so when I can't remember exactly what they're called, but like they're not icicles, but they form up and down from caves. I'm thinking the suffix is kind of similar.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
you guys are so. I don't need to know what I'm talking about. You guys will figure it out. You guys.
No. But
fulgurites are when lightning hits the ground.
Oh, I should have guessed that because that's on beaches. You can go find those.
Yes. And I have here right behind me. I actually have a fulgurite that I was given, and you can see this little path where the lightning split and went in two directions.
Cool.
Yeah, and it's melted sand that's made of glass, and the outer parts still have the gritty texture of what the sand was beforehand. Now you're talking about something that's very, very hot, going through its plasma. that's heading right through the sand and the dirt. Now, one thing that to just correct that people often make the mistake, they'll say, I got hit by lightning and survived. No, you didn't. Okay, if you got hit by lightning, you'd be dead. Okay, because that it vaporizes human tissue. Okay, what you got hit by was the ground current that travels through the ground around the lightning strike. So you know the tree in your yard that gets hit by lightning. If you're standing 10 feet from that tree, it's gonna knock you down, and you'll feel like you got electrocuted if you survive it. And then you will say, I got struck by lightning. Actually, you got hit by the ground current traveling underneath the ground through the saturated grass. Okay. So people don't survive lightning strikes. They do survive the ground current. You know?
Interesting.
Yeah. It's just crazy. You get cooked. Anyway. So we're in talking about the comets, then, you know, we talked about the ices that are on the surface. Okay. We talked about Churyumov-Gerasimenko, this comet that the Rosetta mission went to. Well, we also have this one. This is a very important comet that Daryl was talking about just a few minutes ago.
Halley's Comet.
You got it. This is Halley's Comet,
Beautiful.
as imaged by the Giotto spacecraft, Giotto, Giotto. And Giotto went to Halley and imaged the nucleus of that comet. Now, what's interesting, if you look at this comet, you say, wait a minute, those kind of look like asteroids or something, right? They don't look like comets. Well, I mean, isn't a comet just a dirty snowball? That was the classic representation of a comet. They said, oh, it's just a dirty snowball. Well, in fact, it's not just a dirty snowball. Yes, it's a lot of silicon-based materials that are bound up with ices in them, as we talked about. But it's also an object that has a lot of volatility. So there are voids inside. And if a comet, and it goes to its formation, when a comet first forms, it's not like this congealed ball of ice out in space. It's a bunch of small objects that are kind of gluing themselves together. For example, when you take two objects like two snowballs and you push them together, right? You ever notice that they're glued together? If you let go of the one on the left, it sticks, right?
If you do a good job. Yeah.
If you do a good job. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And because when you strike it, you're actually heating up the surface between the two snowballs, and they melt together very briefly. It's the energy of motion converted into heat when you stop something dead. Okay, like that. So the snowballs melt together, right? Well, that's what happens with comets. Just imagine that happening billions of times with all kinds of particles and stuff. So you can imagine a giant block of icy material. It gets hit by a bunch of smaller ones. In between them, you're going to have some voids. And those voids aren't filled with like a gas per se. But when the sun starts heating things up, then the stuff under those layers starts to melt. It fills the voids with gas. Next thing you know, you have a jet, boom, coming out, right? And it goes for a period of time. Or you have a jet, boom, coming out. This is the dust tail and the outgassing, as it's called, of the comet. Or you have this. Here's Comet Hartley. Oh, that's not Comet Hartley. Here's Comet Hartley. Look at those jets. They're very specific, aren't they? All right. So here's Hartley, and you see all these specific jets. These are areas where there were voids in the comet, and when the stuff melted underneath, it filled the areas beneath the comet's surface. And when it finally could make its way out, right, it ended up shooting out a jet. And when it shoots out a jet, all the material around it goes with it. So that's why you can see the jet, for one thing, because it's spewing dust and stuff off the surface of the comet into space. So that's kind of how comets work. All right. And it's really interesting how cometary systems dwindle and die off at the end, because there is a rocky core in some comets, probably. Yes. And there's rock left in some, and you will find people talking about a quote unquote dead comet.
You talk about dirty snowballs. Some are worse than dirty snowballs. You may remember when you had snowball fights as a kid. Some kids would put a piece of rock or gravel inside the snowball.
Hated those kids.
Yeah, and there's sort of a continuum sometimes between comets and asteroids. And sometimes when the comet is dead, that rocky body that's left, that's still around. And most meteor showers we know of come from comets, like Halley's Comet produces a couple of meteor showers, and the Perseids and a lot of others. Some meteor showers, though, they're produced by so-called rock comets. The Geminids, if I remember correctly, are produced by a rock comet called Phaeton. And the comet's gone, and all that's left is the rock, and that's making the meteor shower.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good.
And that's the dirt from the snowball.
I'm not sure if it's Phaeton, but you might be right. I that's one thing. It's a factoid I don't know, but you're right. And what's interesting about it is that when you look at the tail of the comet, when we took this picture, showed you this picture, the dust tail, that yellowish tail down below, yellow because it's reflecting sunlight, okay, and so forth. That yellow tail is composed of dust and tiny little pebbles of dust that was thrown up into and rock that was thrown up into the area around the comet. And if we were to go through that tail, as Daryl just told you, that would become a meteor shower. This particular comet is not going to pass by our orbit, so we won't get a meteor shower thanks to Comet E3 ZTF, which is what this is. So, but still, it's very interesting to see how it works. Now, the weather out there was supposed to be cloudy tonight, and as it turns out, it's not. Okay. So we had said we're not going to stream it tonight, and we probably won't because I need to take a break for my voice. And then it'll be clear maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after.
Cool.
Yeah.
May I answer a question from chat?
All right.
Yeah, we do have a few coming in. So
Mazda asks, he is hearing with ZTF this anti-tail is an optical illusion. That's not accurate. It isn't, is it? We're just seeing the dust tail from another angle. This is true. That's where anti-tails come from. It's all a matter of perception. And as has been explained in the case with ZTF, we saw the dust tail the anti-tail at its best when we passed through the orbital plane of the comet. And what was happening then, and what is still happening to a degree now, is the tail is pretty much pointing directly away from us. And our perspective, some of it looks like it's ahead of the comet's nucleus when it's actually not. It's just the point of view we have looking at it from inside its orbital plane.
Right.
And the same thing happens with the meteor showers because when Earth's orbit intersects the comet's orbit, that's when we get meteor showers from hitting the debris from the dust tail. When Halley's Comet came around on its way back out, at closest approach to Earth, it was far down in the southern sky, just barely above the southern horizon from here in Colorado. And I caught it in the telescope that night. And I was really curious because I had seen the comet earlier, and it had a short, about a 10-degree gas tail behind it. It was very pretty. The tails had vanished completely when I saw it that night of closest approach, far down in the southern sky. It was down Centaurus, I believe, northern Centaurus, below Scorpius. I saw it that night, and all I saw was an egg-shaped nucleus. And I couldn't figure out what happened to the comet tails. And, of course, it turned out what it was we were looking head on at the comet, and the tails had vanished behind the comet. They were behind it and seeing it edge on like that. The tails were pretty much hiding behind the head of the comet. A few days later, the comet climbed back up in the sky, and the tails came back because they came out from behind the comet.
Yeah.
I hope that makes sense.
I think it does because I said before that we're seeing the comet and the dust tails going into the page, so to speak, and it's behind the comet, so that's why we're seeing it the way it is, and that's just because of our perspective.
Yeah, there's.
You'll often see the dust tail of a comet, and it has a fan shape, kind of a broad fan shape, and what we're seeing is like if you were holding the base end of the fan pointing toward us, and the white end of the fan is pointing away from us back into the back of the page.
Yep. What were you going to say, Amanda?
Well, yeah, I think you've already kind of touched on this, but it seems like there might still be a little bit of confusion. Okay, so the ion tail always points away from the sun, no matter
Yes.
what directions it's going. Okay,
That's right.
so and so it never changes as it goes around the sun. Like it's still always. It's not like tidally locked in a sense, like. The moon always faces the earth, the tail always faces the sun, you know what I mean?
It's always facing away from the sun.
Yeah, as the comet is heading in on its way toward perihelion when it's closer to the sun, the tail is behind the comet. And as the comet rounds the sun and then heads back out again, the gas tail is actually leading the comet.
Yep.
And that's actually what's going on now. ZTF was the perihelion back on January the 12th. When it was close to the sun, and so now it's moving away from the sun again. And the comet, the gas tail, is actually leading the comet on the way back out.
That's right.
Yeah. See, and again, it's all like perception, and I can't remember the word. Like, if I'm here and you're there, and we're both looking at the same thing, and we kind of triangulate from
parallax.
Thank you. See, you guys are so awesome. So like. Would we still see the same thing, or?
Well,
this depends on your point of view.
This will look the same, except for the rotation of the Earth causing you to see a little different angle in the sky. The actual comet with its tail will look almost identical to you, because going across the Earth, 8,000-mile diameter to the other side of the Earth, isn't going to make any difference to how it looks in the sky. It might look slightly different against the stars. All right, but you're still going to see it as long as you're moving in a line that will allow you to still see it. But the star background will change slightly, but the comet itself will look pretty much the same because it's millions of miles in size overall with all of its dust tail and ion tail. So it's really hard to see it change.
And this is why things get so confusing so quickly, because these are such
Well,
big concepts to kind of wrap your head around, and it's all
they are
3D out there.
So do you have any other questions from the chat for us?
Yeah, but what does Daryl want to say first?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, well, just a few more, and again, we might have touched on them already. They're going back a ways. Cyclone wanted to know if a comet like that was to collide with Earth, how big would the crater be? But it's dust. Would it leave a crater?
Well, okay.
Well, the comet's the body, the nucleus is solid. We don't know how big the nucleus is offhand. I tried looking real quick earlier, but it's safe to say it's miles across. And we figured out the other night the comet is moving about 200,000 kilometers an hour, roughly, or about 100. It was 128,000 miles an hour, I believe.
Yeah.
And when you got something miles across going 128,000 miles an hour, if that hits Earth, it's going to leave a crater. Heck yeah. How big? Who knows? Because we don't really know how much mass the comet has.
Yeah, if it hit in the water, would it create a tsunami?
Absolutely.
Wow.
And the other thing, too, to keep in mind, the most important factor from cometary impact may not be the actual collision, but the thermal energy released when it strikes. Because when it does, it's going to cause a massive heat and thermal event at that location in the sky.
Yeah.
And it's going to be massive enough to cause forest fires all over the world. All right. And that's something that we would have to deal with. So we would have fires. We'd have carbon increasing dramatically in the atmosphere. We would have a tremendous amount of localized heating. We'll have changes to the ability for the atmosphere to accept sunlight. Photosynthesis and the plankton in the oceans might not continue as it has. It might be slowed down quite substantially, as in the Permian extinction 251 million years ago, when there was volcanic eruption that spewed stuff into the sky. But the cometary impact would actually, even if the comet blows up, it's still some part of that might actually reach the ground. Keep in mind that I think the Chicxulub impact, or that caused the dinosaurs to go extinct, I think we're talking like what was it, like 10 kilometers in size for that impactor.
Something like that. I forget.
So it doesn't take much to strike the Earth. It depends on the energy of impact. If you dropped it from Earth orbit down to the ground, okay, whatever. It wouldn't be much. But if it's striking the atmosphere at 120,000 miles an hour, that's substantial. So the atmosphere is 100 miles thick. Calculate the time it would take for that to go at 120,000 miles an hour, how long it would take for that to go through 100 miles of atmosphere, and you can see that you basically have seconds.
Yeah.
Sudden stop.
When
Yes.
the Tunguska event happened in Siberia in 1910, they were surprised. It was obviously an impact. Trees were knocked down
Radially.
for hundreds of miles around, and they all pointed back toward the center where the putative impact happened. But scientists, when they went to investigate, they never found a crater. There was no crater.
Yeah.
And this goes back to what Mark was saying, that like I described that Abu Huraira impact, it never reached the ground. It went off like a big giant flashbulb in the sky. It was a huge release of thermal energy, and the shock from the terminal detonation is what knocked the trees down. But there was no crater because it never reached the ground.
Right, but we had obviously some very, very big thermal effects as we've discussed. So those made all the difference.
It's too bad we don't have a stellarium program, like, where you used to like throw moons into planets just to see what happened and stuff. Like, if we could put in different measurements for a comet or whatever and hit it into, the ocean to see what it would do, different oceans, whatever.
Well,
like, what if it hit a mountain? Like, what if it hit Everest?
You could
What
do that.
would happen?
There's actually a online simulation of asteroid impact, and you could say whether it's an icy asteroid or like a comet. So you can make your own, and then you can calculate and see the effects.
Cool.
And there's real landmarks on Earth, like
it's on an Earth map, and you can see the amount of initial devastation. And it says if you're in Mississippi and it strikes New York City, even though it's only a small event and only localized within, say, 150 miles of New York City, the overpressure when that shockwave reaches you will still kill you down in Mississippi.
Gosh.
Okay, yeah, it's incredible.
What do you know what the name of that program is?
It's Asteroid Simulator. Daryl may look for the thing. I'm not going to look for it while I'm looking at everybody here, But
no, I thought you might know offhand.
It sounds like variation on a theme of there are nuclear impact simulators online. You just type in nuclear impact simulator or asteroid impact simulator.
Yeah, and that'll show you.
You with the nuclear weapon simulator, you can type in, you can pinpoint the location you want it to hit, New York City or whatever, and how big, how many kilotons or megatons the weapon is, and you can see how much damage it's going to do.
Because we've seen things like that where you hit, like, Australia and, like, would anywhere in the States be safe kind of thing, like an extreme. And we saw, like, just like seas of orange from like all the explosions and stuff and destruction. I don't know if that was Stellarium. I feel like what was Universal Sandbox?
No, it was Universe Sandbox.
Yeah.
That's for another show. We might actually do a Universe Sandbox thing at some point.
But just because these are such big concepts, like to kind of get a visual, like really puts it in perspective, and it's terrifying because what can you do, right?
Well, okay, I'll just say this, then we'll move forward. One thing to keep in mind, all right, is that if you hit the Earth with an asteroid, the one thing you'll see is a shockwave moving out, and Universe Sandbox creates it accurately. They've been trying to handle that advanced physics properly, and they're actually doing a really good job. If it hits on the opposite side of the Earth, you have a few hours to live, okay? Because the shock wave then travels around the Earth, and this is a shock front that's going to just go around the planet, and it's going to bring that destruction all the way, bring this destruction to you in hours. Yep.
Listen to what he's saying. Hitting on the other side of the planet
Yeah.
will reach you in a few hours.
Yeah, and just like
some big historic volcanic eruptions have done the same thing, like
Tambora,
the echo, the blast wave, the shock wave. It went around the planet a couple of times.
Yeah, but if you saw it in a movie, you'd think it was too far-fetched, to be a real possibility.
Well, that's because they didn't get us to consult on it.
Apparently.
Tara.
Neil deGrasse Tyson has a habit of pointing out flaws in kind of movies like that, science-based movies.
That's okay.
Get a new job, Mark.
Yeah. Tara's sitting over there in wonderment, wondering what's going on. What do you think of all this, Tara? I'm curious what you think.
Well, I was curious if it was just a coincidence that all those pictures of the comets that you showed kind of were the same shape. They kind of had, a narrow center, or a kind that almost looks like a dumbbell too. That kind of looks like a dumbbell. And
yeah, it does, doesn't it?
I'm wondering if there's just some kind of coincidence.
Well, you
remember the snowman they saw with the New Horizons craft.
That was Ultima Thule.
Pluto. Yeah, they saw the snowman shape.
Remember what I told you though? Weird. It's about the snow, the snow congealing.
It.
Exactly. Two bodies came together in deep space and stuck together.
Yeah. And so maybe when we look at this comet, we're seeing two bodies that connected at one point, all right, at the neck, and that's what made this shape. I actually have a 3D print of this somewhere. I was trying to look for it for the show. I couldn't find it.
You do see shapes like that often, like peanuts or whatever.
Yeah, like this one.
Yeah.
Yep.
This one looks to me like the object at the lower right, okay, did have a binary contact melting event to come together with the object at the upper left. Am I right? We don't know.
Yeah, it looks smooth there, perhaps, like you said, the melting. So interesting.
Yeah. So, I think it's interesting. I know that, when we look at the comet, again, this is the image we took. Now, it looks a little different. And if for some reason we can actually stream tonight, Daryl, we might see it a little bit differently than that. Obviously, we will, because the comet tail is going to be pointing in a different direction. But the comet's moving over 6 degrees per 24 hours. So it literally, whereas when I was looking at it, it was way over the northern edge of our building, our observatory. And we had to wait several hours for it to come up enough so we could see it in the telescope, because the edge of the building was blocking it because it was down here. Well, now it's come up here. So now we only have to wait a few minutes to be able to see it. Yeah. And we actually looked at it yesterday, right at the very beginning of the stream, and we just kept it on it until we decided to go take a visit to some other things and then come back to the comet to close out. It was really pretty.
As the comet is following its path, it is getting closer and closer to the North Star, the polar axis, and getting higher and higher. And the comet's presently circumpolar, at least from all but maybe the southernmost states in the U.S. right now. That is, it never sets at all. It's sitting up there in the northern sky, just going around the North Pole 24 hours a day.
That's right.
It's getting higher and higher each night.
Yeah, I want to show you exactly what we're talking about in terms of something more than just a static image like this. Isabella is one of our staunch SkyTour live stream supporters, and she put together a video for us using our imagery, and her and I conferred, and I told her I'm going to take these exposures at the same amount, the same settings, so that you can actually build a video out of it. And she did, and I want to show you what that looks like. Okay, so let's bring it up here and show you now how the comet looks traveling through space. Look at that.
Wow.
Notice that the tail is pointing in the rough same direction. All right. That's not because the Earth is rotating there. This is because the comet is traveling through space at over 120,000 miles an hour.
Yeah. If you see those three stars in a close row there at the beginning, see the comet's actually to the left. Yeah. And it just took a few minutes for the comet to move from the left side of those three stars to the right side.
Right. Isn't that cool?
So cool. Way to go. Isabella's awesome.
Yeah, Isabella's great. Isabella also does all the table of contents for us for a SkyTour live stream. And because of her work, I gave her a free personalized session with Daryl and I, and she actually had a bunch of objects she wanted to see, and which is great because most people don't know what they want to see. She had specific objects, specific times. She had it in her head, so we actually went for it, and I think she had a good time.
Hope so. Yeah.
How could she not?
I don't know. I mean, you know how I am. I'm just a mean guy.
We're about 1 minute away from break.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So that said, okay, I think that what we're discovering then about these comets is really interesting. And before we go to break, I just want to show you the latest the actual instrument that found this comet. Okay, and it's this object right here. It's this.
Oh, wow.
This system. This is the Zwicky Transient Facility. It's on Mount Palomar, and this system is responsible for doing an automated search for comets. Now, what's interesting about the Zwicky Transient Facility, which is really cool, is it's a 576 megapixel monster camera. Okay, absolute monster of a camera, and it's actually. How when we talk about SkyTour live stream, we say, well, our field of view, it's a wide field. We have 4 full moons across by 3 full moons tall. This is 247 full moons.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. It's a massive system, right? So it's installed on the 48-inch Samuel Ocean telescope at Mount Palomar. And it'll look for comets and asteroids. Now, keep in mind, and we're going to head to break now, but keep in mind that one of the things that's interesting is there's over 3,700 known comets so far that we can catalog. We have cataloged. And there's millions more out in the Oort cloud. That's that distant cloud around our solar system from which a star can perturb and disturb an orbit of a very distant object. And eventually, over millions of years, it might make its way into the inner solar system where it can become periodic and go into an elliptical orbit, or just come in once and leave forever. So that's the instrument that's going to find it.
But we won't be leaving forever. We're just taking a 3-minute break.
We're going right now, yeah. So we'll be back right after these words. See ya.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
Are you looking to go on a faraway journey that is magical and mysterious, reaping on mystical legends? If so, then Mysterious Adventure Tours is perfect for you. Imagine a voyage to explore ancient mysteries of Ireland, haunted majesties of Scotland, or their chilling Birth of the Vampires in Romania. These small esoteric getaways are limited and do fill fast. So, go to MysteriousAdventureTours.com and book your trip soon.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected. Only at KGRADB.com.
Hey, welcome back to SkyTour. I was going to say, I almost said SkyTour live stream. The SkyTour Radio. This is Mark D'Antonio, Daryl Mason down there, Tara Diulis, and Commander Amanda over there.
Hey.
Yay. So what I wanted to do was to show you a little bit about where these comets come from. And we're going to do it by looking at an image taken by the James Webb Space Telescope. And it's this image. Okay. This is a dust disk around the star AU Microscopy in Microscopium. All right. And this is what's interesting about this is it's taken at two different frequencies. It's not a blue light object. Okay. It was in red light. This is all infrared. They changed the color to make it more obvious. But the blue one is much brighter and has more intensity. If you look to the right of the dashed line, which represents the star was removed electronically. You can see that very, very bright white dashed line there. That shows that a lot of dust is being reflected back or scattered or a lot of dust is scattering light there. And so that process called Rayleigh scattering is the process that makes our sky blue. Now, it has nothing to do with the color here, but it's something that very small particles can do well. And the molecules in our atmosphere scatter sunlight, making it look blue. It scatters the blue part of the sunlight. The red, not so much, right? But this image here, this is showing us a many hundreds of astronomical unit size disk surrounding the star. Wow. Now, when we talked about comets and where they come from, we talked about this distant cloud around our solar system, all right? And it's a cloud, and it's also a disk. This we're seeing a disk. The upper one we see a disk. The lower one it's the same disk in different frequencies of infrared light. Now, in this disk, this is the realm of the comets. Way far out there, okay, is where we would find objects like the objects we find in our Kuiper belt, the icy bodies out there, or Daryl mentioned Ultima Thule, that the New Horizons spacecraft approached. That was out in our Kuiper belt. And that's actually, in this particular image, that's only about a third of the way out in this image. Beyond that, we have a disk in our solar system called the Oort disk. That's O-O-R-T. And the Oort disk is joined by the Oort cloud, which is a spherical collection of these amazing objects that are out in the outer solar system. And it's from that cloud that the comets that come into our solar system from time to time can be generated. Now, how is that? Well, they're already there. They're orbiting the sun in their own way, taking perhaps a billion years to circle the planet, for all we know, or circle the sun, or hundreds of millions of years. But if there's a star passing by, and you might say, well, how can that happen? Well, because it does, and it has. All right. And that star will disturb the orbit of that particle, and then it'll make its way into the inner solar system, perhaps. And when it does, then it sets it up as either an elliptical orbit or a parabolic orbit where it comes and goes, or a hyperbolic orbit where it goes even faster. So that said, that's kind of where these things come from. And the James Webb is showing it to us around another star right there. Now, the Hubble did the same view and showed us the same thing. And as you can see, I mentioned about a third of the way out, size of Neptune's orbit. You can see at the bottom of that diagram, and you see how many astronomical units further that goes out. I mean, that's quite far, Anyway, I know that, yeah, it is. It is. I know you had some questions too, Tara, about comets, perhaps, and I thought maybe we should cover those.
Tara always has the best questions.
She asks all the questions.
So well read. Oh my God.
Well, you all are.
We all are, we all kind of have our own interests, which makes it so fun to have a discussion with all the minds. And I'm
I
just
prefer
curious.
Tara.
Well, I'm curious, how can we harness the energy of these comets? I mean, isn't that really what our goal is as humans? Can we harness this energy somehow? Is that a possibility? And how can we use comets to our advantage, I guess?
That is a really good question. I
I
guess.
told ya.
I guess. We could figure out how to harness them for their components, like the water and other ice
Minerals?
comet.
Mm.
I mean, we're probably going to find methanol and formaldehyde ices and ammonia ices, and probably we know water ice, and there'll be carbon monoxide there, and some acids as well. There's going to be a lot of material on a cometary body that might be of use, but I don't think it'll be of use to us until we're actually off the Earth, because right now it's an expedition
Distant
to go
future.
there. It'd be an expedition to go there.
Hmm.
We don't have the means to just sort of like, okay, go to this comet today and let me know what you find tonight when you get back. I mean, we don't have that technology yet, right? But that's a cool question. What do you think, Daryl?
The idea is pretty much the same as asteroid mining they're looking into now. People have plans to mine asteroids, go out and harvest valuable materials and bring them back to Earth. And it's a variation on a theme. It'd be the same thing with comets. Actually, asteroids would be more practical because we know where they are. They're not moving so fast in and out of the system as comets tend to come and go so quick.
Yeah. Now, one thing we'll say too is we've done this on Earth before, Tara. We have, because there was a thought process back in the 70s when they thought there might be a water crisis on the Earth. Remember? And what did we? What did we want to do? Do you remember the concept back then?
Were we going to desalinate the ocean or something, or
not that necessarily? There's already some desalinated objects in the ocean that we could have used for fresh water.
Icebergs,
right? Remember that?
Okay.
We'll just tow an iceberg to New York.
Yes.
That's what they thought, right? But if you think about it, you laugh, right? And we all did, and still do. But the concept was sound in that it was harvesting something natural to use for a resource that's running out. Right. And so we would want to find that same thing on a comet, right? We'd want to find that same thing on the moon or on an asteroid, like Daryl said. We go to the moon and we can get a lot of helium-4, which is an isotope of helium. Now, why is that important? Because it's a very important fuel if you're doing fusion. And if we're doing a fusion reactor, if we have a fusion reactor, which, and Daryl may laugh at me for this, is only 10 years away, That's
what they said 10 years ago.
That's right. That's the idea, right? But they did do a sustained reaction at Lawrence Livermore Laboratory. Now, I was in touch with one of the scientists from Lawrence Livermore because, this scientist actually has granted us the rights to use his property. That's where SkyTour Livestream is located, in the West Desert. It's on his property. So I got a little bit of a lowdown about this, about the whole fusion project. It was started like 25, 30 years ago, and they only got to the point of this sustained reaction just recently, because you got to put all this energy into it just to get it to happen. And then what happens isn't nearly add up to all this energy they put in. Well, now they put in this energy, and the reaction they got out came close to actually making all this energy again. So we're getting close, and it's going to allow us to reach that, if it hasn't already, the break-even point and sustain a reaction. And if we can sustain a reaction, have it going on and on and on at millions of degrees, by the way, in the core, so you can see it's really it's hot, and try finding materials that could withstand the heat from the center of the sun. You can't.
Right.
So we have issues. We have some issues. But if we can do a sustained reaction, then we'll be able to use the helium-4, say, on the moon, if we mine it, to create that's a fuel. That's a step that we have to create here on Earth to then provide fuel for a fusion reaction. But if we could just mine the helium-4 directly and refine it on the moon, now that can just go right into making and skip all these steps to make the helium-4. Now we can go in to do this. We don't have to make deuterium out of hydrogen atoms. We don't have to take the deuterium and collide it with bohr to make helium-3 and then get the helium-4. We can just go and start with helium-4 because science don't care where you started, as long as you started somewhere along the way. And as long as your temperatures and your conditions are perfect, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that's how we could use, say, the moon. Now, a comet, as Daryl said, it's fast moving.
Yeah.
That's like trying to grab an iceberg that's racing down a river.
Well, would it have to be on their orbit? Maybe you can talk about that. You mentioned how there's a few different types of orbits, and how can we determine what types of orbits these comets have? And obviously, there's a trajectory of it, but
yeah, I mean, comets that are in, and Daryl probably wants to talk about this too. Comets that are in one-time orbits where they come and they go, probably not the best choice. But comets are also in elliptical orbits. The only problem is, for some comets, many comets, that orbit takes them all the way out to Saturn and then back again, kind of, sort of. So
a long time.
It's a long time, and you don't have distance on your side.
With repeated passes through the inner solar system, comets often influenced by Jupiter's gravity and the sun, their orbits tend to shrink over each pass, and they get closer and closer, and their period of orbit gets smaller and smaller. There are comets out there. Comet Encke is one, I think, that comes around every few years now. It has probably been depleted quite a bit versus when it was a young, wild, crazy comet, but it still passes through the inner solar system on a regular basis. And maybe if they found something useful on a comet, like Mark was saying, helium-3 or 4, whatever, that they could go out and tap one of those comets. A lot of comets, though, like Halley's Comet, it comes around about every 76 years. And some comets, like some are saying about ZTF here, 50,000 years. That you'd have to be planning way ahead for one like
way
that.
ahead. That's long-term planning.
Yeah,
Which we need to do.
It's a drop in the bucket for on the cosmic scale, but on the human scale, of course, it's just ridiculously long.
Right.
So it's interesting how the orbits work, and I think probably one of the better ideas would be for us to get the technology to mine an asteroid or the moon and do that. Now, in addition to the asteroids are actually very far out there. And we just had one pass within 2,700 miles of the Earth the other day. Just before all the excitement about the comet came through, this asteroid went. It's like, hey, what was that? Oh, it's just an asteroid. Don't worry. But to be fair, it was the size of a truck, a box truck. I mean, it wasn't that big, but still big enough to certainly cause a Chelyabinsk type explosion in the atmosphere should it have hit at a whatever angle it could have come in. So, and Chelyabinsk hurt over 900 people. Right, and it blew out security doors. The Russians love their dash cams, and man, they had dash cams and security cams, and you could watch for half an hour. You could watch all these impacts of this comet hitting the security doors and stuff. And that would happen again. That overpressure could push in a metal security door and pin it right in like this, and you watch it happen. That's a lot of force, So
a lot of the people got hurt by broken glass that way.
In the office buildings, you saw at school, you see broken glass come in like a wave and just go, it's like, and nobody knows it's coming because it's coming from above, hits the ground and bounces off and goes right into the wall of the school. Yeah, there's a lot of danger associated with this. So that's why movies that show a comet coming in and we go to stop it and everything. Comets are actually very loosely put together, it seems. More like, as I said, collections of ice that have glued themselves together, kind of like Daryl was mentioning about Ultima Thule, which, a contact binary it's called. So two things that were originally in orbit, they start to touch, and then that impact causes a little bit of heating, which melts enough ice for them to now glue together, and there's nothing to pull them apart. Now, if you could hit one with a big hammer, besides it cracking all over the place, it would probably separate from the other one. Yeah, so I don't know. But so that's interesting. That's a good question. Thank you, Tara. Do you have anything else you want to add?
Oh, not right now. Go ahead. I want you to continue on because.
Okay, because I was going to go into some of the other things that the James Webb Space Telescope has found, because we're talking about the infrared systems and looking at how the infrared data here shows us the cometary realms around other stars. So I thought maybe it would be fun to look at what the James Webb has done for us. Yeah. Now,
didn't want to do the deep dive.
Yeah, I do actually, and so I was trying to work out whether we're gonna do that now, because I was thinking that might be a good idea. You're ready to go with that, right?
Yeah.
Is it up? Okay. All right.
Daryl's always ready to go.
Yeah. Awesome. We're ready.
Just hand him a telescope and give him the floor.
Yeah. So I'm happy to let you know that we'll have Daryl Mason do deep dive right now, and we'll have him go through and give us the highlights for what's happening.
Okay. Well, here it comes.
I feel like we should have a drum roll.
Okay.
Too late, Amanda.
So this is tonight. This is actually about 10 minutes ago. As usual, I'm going to start with sunset. You see, there's the sun right there. I'm going to take away the atmosphere and take it to where the sun is just setting. And there we go. Now, some days ago, you may remember a few weeks ago, Saturn was up here above Venus. And back on the 22nd, I think it was, Saturn and Venus were in conjunction. And Saturn has continued moving down past Venus, heading toward the sun. It's going to pass behind the sun. Venus is also actually behind the sun, but since it's much closer to us than Saturn is, Saturn's like about 1 billion miles away. Venus right now may be 100 some odd million miles away. Venus is coming around the sun in its orbit, coming closer to us every night. Saturn is just falling farther and farther away. So Saturn is going to go away in the coming days. Venus is going to keep continuing climbing up the ecliptic plane, that highway in the sky I talk about, that the sun and the moon and the planets all follow across Earth's sky. Venus will be climbing up in the coming months. And Jupiter in turn is going to be dropping. We will eventually see Jupiter in conjunction with Venus, and then it will also follow Saturn down into the sunset. But for now, here we are. I'm going to keep this short and sweet tonight, though. We are, here we are, we're close to sunset. And here comes the evening sky, where we've been spending a lot of our time. We've still been up. We visited Andromeda recently. Andromeda is setting fairly early in the evening now. We've been in Perseus. We've been in Auriga, looked at M35 and all those cool things. And here is Mars. And I wanted to touch on this. You see, here's the moon right here tonight. And here is Mars. And in a couple of days, on the 30th, actually tomorrow night, the moon is going to do again what it did back on December 7th. The moon is going to occult the planet Mars. It's going to pass in front of it like an eclipse, and Mars is going to disappear behind the moon. And you give it enough time, a little later at night, the moon will come back out behind Mars. Okay, let me back up one here. So you see here later in the evening, or early in the morning actually, the Mars is going to come out from behind the moon again. Now, what's different this time than the December 7th event. Um, on December 7th, the moon and Mars were both at opposition. They were both full, so to speak. I've talked about a thing called syzygy before. This is where three or more objects form a straight line in space. And on December 7th, the sun, the earth, the moon, and Mars, all four made a straight line in space.
Wow.
Therefore, we saw the moon pass in front of Mars and occult the planet. And a little later that evening, the moon kept moving this way. Mars came out from behind the moon. We could see it. We got images of it. I got to see it that night through binoculars, both the disappearance and the reappearance. It was really cool. You could actually see some surface features on the planet. At that time, Mars was only about 1/100th the size of the moon in the sky. Mars is actually about twice the size of the moon, but it was very much farther away. So it only looked like a 1/100th the size. At Mars's closest approach to Earth, when it was in opposition, it was about 17 arc seconds across, which is tiny. And when this happens tomorrow night, Mars is only going to be about 10 arc seconds across. So it's going to be even smaller. But tomorrow night, the moon is going to pass in front of Mars again. Now, the downside of it is it's only going to be visible from the southern U.S. and Central and South America, I believe. Fortunately,
I know where the southern U.S. is.
Yeah. Fortunately, if the weather cooperated, this will be visible from the observatory in Arizona, Mark's Observatory. Don't know if we'll get to look or not, but it is going to happen anyway. If you live in the southern U.S., go out and take a look.
We will watch. We'll watch for it, Daryl. I think if it's clear, we will. I mean, it's the weather right now calls for clouds, but it's calling for clouds tonight, and there's none to be seen as far as I looked. So I don't know what's going on. So maybe it'll be clear tomorrow, and if it's clear tomorrow, we will have a chance to actually look for this on the 30th.
I don't have the times in front of me. I have the article somewhere, but I didn't have time to get it. But anyway, that's one thing to look for tomorrow night. Now, as we progress through the evening, you see Orion is actually west of the meridian. It's in the western half of the sky before 10 p.m. now. At 9:30 at night, it's already west of the meridian. And by, 11:30 at night, all the bright stars of winter, the winter circle there, they're all west of the meridian. Winter's going away, believe it or not. You got spring to look forward to. You'll have Aldebaran, Capella, Castor Pollux, Procyon, Sirius, Rigel. Those are the winter circle, and they are all west of the meridian before midnight now. So winter is getting ready to go away. So yay for that. And then here comes the stars of springtime: Leo and Ursa Major, Comet Berenices, Virgo, and all this area right here. This is where a lot of the brightest galaxies in the sky are in the stars of spring, and that's something for us to look forward to. And now I'm going to go to the main event. We're going to the northern sky. Okay. Here is the Little Dipper. Okay. And there is Polaris, the pole star. That's the Earth's celestial pole is right next to Polaris. And here is the comet tonight by 11:30. And I'm going to back the time up. You see how it's sort of rotating around the North Star as we progress through the night.
Oh, cool.
Last night, the comet was right about here, if I remember correctly. The front two stars in the bowl of the Little Dipper, Firkat and Kochab, were pointing at the comet here, and the comet was heading roughly this way, heading north. By the 1st of February, when the comet is closest to Earth, you see it's actually going to move that far. It'll be up above the North Star. It'll actually be in Camelopardalis. And that's how fast the comet is moving now. If we keep watching it, over those days, over the next 12 days, you see how fast the comet's moving? The comet is going to be right up by Mars on February the 10th. And it's really going to be booking across the sky. But here we are, and there's the comet, and we'll bring you back to tonight. Ta-da. If we get to see the comet again, I mean, it's going to be even farther above the Little Dipper now, pretty much right to the east of the North Star, and it's going to keep climbing night by night up into Camelopardalis. That's the giraffe right there.
Mm-hmm.
See the giraffe?
There it is, upside down.
That's pretty much it for the deep dive tonight, Mark. If
Cool.
I want to hand it back to you.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Daryl. That's always interesting and exciting to see what's going on from that perspective, because you know, you can be an astronomer but not have really good knowledge of the sky. I had too many people in astronomy that I knew like that, professors and so forth, that you ask them about the Big Dipper and they're like, I don't know where it is. I just tell my telescope to go there. So I've tried to blend my knowledge, and thanks to Daryl, he actually sparked me into kind of being a little bit more knowledgeable of the sky as well, just because I've noticed it really does matter. So thank you very much, Daryl.
Well, I mean, the sky has our stories from antiquity in it, and our culture and our history is all up there in the sky.
Yep.
And people get so excited about programs like Stellarium, you know, all the possibilities, and then there's just so much information, they kind of get stuck and like get overwhelmed and lose interest. But you know, when you're actually being like guided through and like, look, these are the possibilities, once you work with it, like just the possibilities are endless. And you know, I was just talking to Ronald. He's, you know, a big time supporter of the show, and he's been on Stellarium, and he's still trying to figure out how to switch like times and days to see, like, you know, what's going on next week, or when's the closest approach to whatever this month, or whatever you want to look for. But little functions like that, if you can't find that, you're limited, right? So every time we do this, if you can learn one thing each time, you know.
Well, Stellarium is pretty easy. It's kind of a touchy program. If you try to drag the horizon around, it can get away from you. Or if you zoom
Like,
in
ooh.
on it, it'll really jump around. There's another program called the Sky Live. I could show real quick if you wanted to see it.
Yeah, why don't you do that? And
is that one free too?
Yeah, it's online.
Nice.
Actually, you know
Get
what,
on your
Daryl?
phone too.
Scroll down to the bottom and go through the path of the comet too, to show people in 3D what we're talking about with the comet.
Oh.
Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah. I was going to do that, and I figured that's a great idea.
Now, this is called the Sky Live. It acts a lot like Stellarium does. In some ways, it's a little more stable. You have to play with both programs some. In the Sky Live, here is the location. You can click on that and change it. Here is the time. If you click on that, you'll bring up the time and date, and you can change your parameters there.
How do you put in where your location is?
You just click on that right there where it says.
Perfect.
Right now it's in Colorado because it's for me. You just click on that and you can change it to wherever you are.
So people in Australia can see what we're expecting to see, right?
Yeah, you don't have to. The Sky Live, well, no, it won't. It'll save your location if you change it. When Sky Live comes up, it's usually based in Greenwich, England.
Oh, Greenwich Mean Time. Okay.
Yeah. But once you change it, it'll stay there. I mean, all I have to do now is go up into my address bar and type in the Sky Live, and it goes right to it every time.
And stupid question. This is live, right? This isn't just a simulator?
It's a simulation, yes.
Yeah, no, but she means, does it show it right now? You can't.
Is it
can
tracking
show
the Comet live
Yes.
right now?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I mean, I could
but
set it.
we can mess around with it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I could set it to 5:30 at night and it would be live. We're at 5 p.m. right now. Here it is at 6 o'clock. You can see the comet is a little bit east of north. It'll even tell you how high it is. It's 30 degrees up at 6 p.m. already.
Cool.
And you can change it night by night. And you see the comet shifted from where it was to where it'll be tomorrow night. And all the same things that Stellarium will do.
How fun.
And one thing that you can learn if you play with both programs, you will see what's common between the two and how the changes work, how you get to where you want to go. You can drag the horizon around. I mean, there's the western horizon. There's Saturn and Venus. You can drag it back around to north, wherever you want to look at. And since Comet ZTF is what we're interested in, well, this is where we're pointed, is looking north right now. And again, the commonality between Stellarium and the Sky Live, they're both free programs. If you mess with both of them, you will become acquainted with both of them, and you'll get to where it's no big deal to navigate around in either one of them.
Cool.
This one, I'm assuming it's going by like projections. How often is it updated live? Like, let's say something unexpected happened that threw the projection way off. How long would this website reflect that? If that makes sense.
I don't know the answer to that myself, but I can address that.
Okay.
We noticed that the coordinates for the comet, as given by the Sky Live here, are not correct. When we go to the coordinates as given, we still have to go north about a degree to find it. So
yeah, and both Stellarium and the Sky Live can be off a little bit.
Well, I mean, it's free, and I mean, that's not
And you're
bad.
still
You know,
close.
it's not bad for what it is. I'll take a degree, but
It's plenty good for naked eye. It's plenty good for binoculars.
yeah.
If let's see here. I'm going to go back to the page you will land on when you first go to the Sky Live. Bear with me here.
And you wouldn't be using this to actually follow the comet anyway. This is more really for simulations, though, right?
No, it's just to show you objects of interest that people are looking at. And if you notice right there, C/2022 E3 ZTF, that's the comet. And it's in biggest letters because that's the thing most people have searched on at the site.
When you type the Sky Live into your address bar, or if you have it saved to your favorites, and you click on it, this is the page where you will begin. And we're interested in Comet C22 E3. Here is the Comet's page, and here is all sorts of information going way down the page with information about the comet. And click on go to interactive sky chart, and there you go.
Very cool.
And you take off from there. Now, this is current time. If you click on the time, then your time bar will come up with time, day and date, and all that happy stuff.
Wonderful.
So
this one's really, really cool. I don't know if I had. How long has this one been around for? I mean,
years.
Years, yeah. No, I don't know about this one.
No.
I remember a few titles, but this one is very cool.
Yeah,
Can I
this
show?
is the sky right now.
Yeah.
There's the Little Dipper. There is there is Polaris, the North Star. There's the Big Dipper. You see the bowl of the Big Dipper pointing at the Little Dipper, and the Little Dipper was pointing at the comet.
That's neat.
Wow.
Okay.
Can I add on to this a little bit?
Sure.
Okay, I'm gonna share a screen as well.
All right, I'm going to close this.
All right, but this
Thank you,
is
Daryl.
also on the Sky Live. Daryl showed you this page here that he was at, and if you scroll down, you get to this main page. Okay, you click on the comet when you get to the main page, and it brings you to this page. This is the comet with all its finder charts and close-ups and actual sky shots, kind of a thing.
Cool.
However, you go all the way down, And for those that want to know what the 3D orientation is, this is what you get.
Yes.
Wow.
This shows you, there's the comet. And the comet is going this way,
That's
right?
awesome.
And it's actually heading out. It's actually getting closer to Earth. And it's going to have its closest approach to the Earth right there in just a couple days. Right. And at that point, now you can see, though, the tail, the dust tail, is going to be kind of behind it and pushed out a little bit by the solar wind, which you can see here. And so from the Earth, you can imagine that the ion tail, which is going to be like going this way, okay, and the dust tail, which is going to be going that way, you can actually see how that might work to create this dusty tail from the Earth's perspective down here looking up. Okay, we might see that dust tail behind the comet and the ion tail to the right of it. See, you can see how that perspective works out.
Oh, that helps so much to see it like that.
Yeah, and this is also part of the skylive.com if you go there. And SkyTour Livestream has no affiliation with them at this point. But there's always time, right? I guess we can figure out if there's something for us there. But it's a really interesting way to view things in a 3D perspective, and it helps you visualize what you're seeing on the sky.
Yes.
So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah. So Ronald, if you're having trouble with Stellarium or the Sky Live, the best thing you can do is just open the program and play with it. And the more you play with it, the more familiar you'll become, and the better you'll get at manipulating the program.
Is there a way, if you mess it up too badly, is there a way you can like reset the whole screen and get back to like the default?
Anything else, you can leave it and come back.
Just
fill
hit
it
the
up with moons or something. Yeah.
hit the refresh on your browser.
Perfect. Question, with that little animation you just showed with the 3D one, it looked like the comet was going between Earth and Mars. Would we, I don't know if this question is going to make sense, would we know or care if, say, the comet was going between like Saturn and Uranus, or Mercury and Venus?
Comets only start to become visible to us when they get close enough to the sun to heat their surfaces and cause that outgassing with that big coma and the millions of miles long tail. When they're out by Saturn, which many comets go out to Saturn in their elliptical orbit and then come in for the periodics, you won't see anything out there. You could see a faint fuzzy spot, and you can actually still see Halley's Comet right now. It's gone, right? 76 years, right? It's going to come back, from that time it was here last time. But it's still visible. It's a very, very faint object, though, because it's not doing anything from the sun. It's inert right now. There's nothing going on. There's no outgassing, so you don't really see much.
Well,
right?
You might not see much, but that doesn't mean stuff isn't still going on out there, right? Or is it just too cold out there to be doing anything?
Yeah, in the deep freeze, most activities cease. There might be something going on, but it's going to be something that's a low temperature activity, nothing that's from a high temperature perspective.
I just usually hear about like Earth going through the tail, and I'm like, well, what happens if like Earth isn't like the one it's beside,
Mm-hmm.
There's that great big comet out there that was in the news a while back. It's still on its way in, and it's outgassing already, and it's out past the orbit of Saturn. I don't think it's ever supposed to get any closer than the orbit of Saturn, yet it's outgassing. And it's a great big comet, too.
Well, then we should look for that.
I have a question.
Yes,
do these the outgassing so they're cold until they get warmed up by the sun? I would have thought that their leading edge would have some friction and there would be some warmth on that. But do they go faster or slower based on their temperature?
No. Their orbit determines their speed. Now, because they're elliptical, all right, you can imagine that as something gets closer to the sun, right, it's going to start going a little faster in an elliptical orbit and then swing around and start to slow down immediately as it heads out. That's how the elliptical orbits work. Okay. But no matter what, you can still calculate all the parameters because an object moving in an elliptical orbit will do what's called sweep out equal areas in equal time. So yes, it moves faster around the center where the sun is, but it sweeps out this gigantic arc. But it's also going to do the same amount farther away. All right, and so we can calculate an orbit and know that it's stable parameters from the orbit. Now, outgassing and other perturbations, disturbances by Jupiter can change orbits, as well as it comes around the sun. You mentioned something about friction. Let me just say, not necessarily friction, but you are getting solar wind impact on the head of the comet, and those are protons and electrons that protons have mass, and that's striking this comet. Okay, and so it is going to have some type of an effect. Besides heating and pulling things off, it starts all these jets out, and those jets act like little jets and will move a comet potentially. If it's a big jet, like we saw Churyumov-Gerasimenko, that set of jets was pretty massive, right? I mean, those are pretty big jets that we're looking at. Like, this is giant, right? There's a big jet there, the whole length of the comet in length. So that has some type of physics effect, to its motion. Now, all of that can be calculated, but the thing is, there's still uncertainties because we can't predict when jets occur, and we can't predict when they'll shut down. And we can't predict if a comet will have jets at all, right? Okay, Halley's may or may not have had jets. We can't really see. It looks like it may have had. Hartley definitely had jets. You can see them there. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe that's going to induce a slow roll or a slow spin in it, for all we know, But we can't tell what's going to happen. So, but either way, those protons and electrons striking the comet do have a cumulative effect, and they will cause the comet to get smaller, right? As more stuff goes off the comet. It's called mass loss. It's losing mass every time it comes back. So as Daryl mentioned earlier, more comes around, the more stuff outgasses. Finally, you're left with something with nothing left to outgas. And you might have a dead, they call it a dead comet. And to us, that would look like a small asteroid. For all we know, the asteroid that just blasted through 2,700 miles over the Earth could have been a comet from several billion years ago that was now a dead comet. And to us, it looks like an asteroid, but it might have just been the core of an old comet.
Something else.
That's a D'Antonio thought, not a mainstream astronomy thought, but that's also possible. So that's how it works, right? So clearly, comets have always remained a mystery, and they were the harbingers of doom in the past. And
the skies themselves, the sky itself portends the death of kings.
Yes, that's right. From solar eclipses,
I was going to say that sounds Shakespearean.
From solar eclipses to lunar eclipses to cometary apparitions when comets appear, it's guided our culture. Those events have guided our culture.
Well, in the days before science, I mean, people have always looked for the meaning of life, and they have sought meaning in the universe by their observations, and they tried to put two and two together. And, they see a comet, some king dies, and they say, golly,
Yeah, he caused the comet.
Yeah.
That's life. That's life.
So I have another question, if I may. So,
of course.
What about the size of a comet? I mean, maybe you can just touch base again, the difference between an asteroid and a comet. And is there an upper or lower limit of a comet size that would change what we call it?
I think
identify it?
I think there is an upper level mass limit. We wouldn't call Ceres the asteroid, okay, a dwarf planet, actually. We wouldn't call it a comet.
Right.
They're small objects, and they're defined in a lot of ways by their trajectory. Okay, their trajectory, and if they start outgassing, it's not an asteroid anymore. Now it's a comet. Okay, and so icy bodies that come in from the Oort cloud like that, or far out in the Kuiper belt, okay, if they come into the inner solar system and they start outgassing, we call those comets. But ever since I was a kid, thinking about comets, I always thought of them as it's gonna sound funny, gassy asteroids.
It sounds funny to say.
Yeah,
I'm glad you added the Eords at the end.
Well,
As I mentioned earlier, too, I mean, short period comets, they used to be long period comets and repeated passes. Jupiter and the sun's influence and the other planets, they've all worked to shorten the period of the comet, like Comet Icky and some others,
yeah.
to where they come around every couple of 3 or 4 or 5 years. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised if, as they round off those long elliptical orbits into shorter, more regular orbits, maybe some of them become asteroids.
And something, as much as we know about our solar system, one of the things that we haven't yet done is penetrate into the center of a comet. We can speculate what's inside a comet. We think that there is a rocky core that has served as a nucleus, a seed, if you will. And when I brought up that image of a piece of interstellar dust, if you scale that up, you can think of that thinking that might be like a comet. Here's the comet nucleus, and then we have all this icy stuff on the surface, mixed with all kinds of ices and so forth. I mean, that it may not be it's not entirely accurate in terms of the composition, but the accretion model, the model of accretion, how they grew, could be somewhat accurate. That could be how it works. But we know that they're billions of years old. The comets that we see, this comet here, C/2022 E3 ZTF, this comet came in from billions of years ago. It was made in billions of years ago, and it came into the inner solar system, and we get to see it. And incidentally, looking at this comet, that ion tail to the right, okay, those are particles leaving the comet never to come back, and the dust tail that you see in the yellow, those are particles leaving the comet never to come back. Mass loss. This is the comet losing mass. So the comet's going to go around the sun and leave after a weight loss program.
If it were only that easy.
If it were only that easy, yeah.
Let's go take a drive around the sun.
It's on a 50,000 year, potentially, a mass loss program, right? The longer the period, I guess the better it is for, its longevity. But, all right. So if we move on here, I wanted to talk about one of the other interesting discoveries that the James Webb Telescope has shown us. And if you remember, we had imaged the planet, the moon, actually, Titan, around Saturn, largest moon of Saturn. It's actually planet-sized, right? And Titan, we landed the Huygens lander on Saturn's moon Titan, and it imaged for a few minutes before it froze up, and we got to see pebbles just a few inches from the lander. It's like, oh, there are the pebbles. Okay, cool. It's dead, right? That was very interesting, but that was short. That was right on top of it. That was there, but Titan itself has revealed itself to us in this way. This is the James Webb imaging of Titan in November of just this past year. Now, interestingly enough, the atmospheric haze on Titan, okay, prevents you from taking a photograph of the surface, right? But in the infrared, you can kind of punch through and see some of this because it's so cold, but you can see differences in the cold, and that's what we're seeing here. Now, this one here was captured in the infrared with what's called a 2.12 micron filter, and it's sensitive to Titan's lower atmosphere. Okay, that bright spot you're looking at, okay, that bright spot or the bright spots, yeah, right. The bright spots are clouds and atmospheric haze, yeah. All right, and the right-hand image, this is a composite using NIRCam, which is a near infrared camera on James Webb, and so the blue is at 1.4 microns. Okay, that's the size of the infrared. That, and the green is at 1.5 microns, and the red is at 1.9 microns. So what does all that mean? It means that we're able to penetrate into the atmosphere and look down to the level to see several prominent surface features. Okay. We have Kraken Mare there. That's interesting location. And it's thought to actually be a methane sea. Can you imagine an ocean of methane?
No.
Liquid methane? Yeah, it's crazy. Now, Titan does have a pretty thick atmosphere, but it's also very cold. So just the right conditions to have liquid methane and ethane, another hydrocarbon.
And that's supposed to be someplace we want to go?
Can you believe it? They're saying, oh, well, we can transform Titan. It's like,
wow.
Looking at Titan, it does have all the components of the early Earth. It's just that it's in a deep freeze. Now, the only way Titan might be hospitable someday, is if the sun goes into its red giant phase and the sun's on its way to dying.
Yep.
Now, that's going to warm up Titan a little bit because the increased luminosity, even though the outside temperature of the sun is going to drop. And the American Road Warrior says it must stink. It is methane, so yeah, it's probably not too pleasant. I can bet on that. But we're not going to have sulfur dioxide there, probably. But it's going to stink. But so that green thing could be Kraken Mare, and this other object here, this bright object, this bright albedo feature. Albedo, of course, is a reflectivity feature, and that's Adiri. And then Bellet is this other circular set of colored sand dunes that are there. And so that's pretty interesting. This is being shown by the James Webb. So that telescope can see the disk and it can see right down to the surface features, using the infrared.
Looks like Earth. It almost looks like Earth.
Almost, but that's where it ends.
Yeah, the methane gets me.
Yeah, the methane's going to get you. If not, there's no oxygen atmosphere here. There's oxygen there bound up in other things, and there's lots and lots of water ice on the planet. I keep calling it a planet because it is bigger than. I think it's larger than Mercury, isn't it?
It is.
So it's actually the size of a planet in our solar system, but it's a moon because Saturn's so much bigger. See? Going back to your question about what differentiates an asteroid from a comet, well, there's a size limitation, but there's also a mass composition and orbital feature that tells you too. Pluto was considered a planet, right? And it has a 17
I was just
degree.
thinking about that.
I bet you were right, Amanda.
Yeah.
Pluto has a 17-degree inclination to our solar system, and so it has an elliptical orbit that's different enough from the stable plane of the orbits that over time people took Clyde Tomball's discovery of Pluto and said, "Sorry, we're making it a dwarf planet now. You don't get to be a planet anymore."
Humbug.
Right?
Don't listen to them, Clyde. Size doesn't
Your own
matter.
path.
Yeah. I've told people I met Clyde Tomball and we sat and had a nice talk on a grassy knoll up at Stellafane, Vermont, at an astronomy conference where we were, and Clyde was going to do a talk, and so I sat with him and we talked for a while. He never imagined he would even find a planet. And as Daryl's pointed out multiple times, Clyde never did have a actual degree in astronomy. He just became enthusiastic, and that was at a time when your enthusiasm could get you a job as an astronomer.
Yep. He was just a farm kid from Kansas.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right.
Danger, Will Robinson. We are about to hit the
We
wall.
are there.
Oh,
We
look,
are there.
perfect timing, Kathy, as usual.
Yeah.
Great final last words. Make Pluto
Yeah.
a planet again.
Make Pluto a planet again.
Ooh, send your dollars now.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody.
Well, folks, you have a good night, and thank you for spending time with us. Next week, we'll talk about a few more of the James Webb discoveries. But until then, have a good night. We'll see you. And just remember, keep looking up.
Except while you're driving.
Good
Take
night,
care.
everybody.
Bye.
Good night.